Hey YouTube, sorry it's been a little while since I posted a review, but I figured I'd finally get it out of the way. Reviewing Heretics of DUNE, and I'll probably do the next one right after this, just get a good solid recording session in. Anyway, Heretics of DUNE is book 5 in Frank Herbert's DUNE saga, and some of my thoughts on it. I apologize for the background noise, I'm just kind of recording here at school right now, it's kind of my life lately, so... Anyway, Heretics of DUNE. This is the beginning of the end of Frank Herbert's saga. And I will warn to some, minor spoilers here, because this is a hard book to address without talking about what actually happens. But I will prelude by saying that Frank Herbert continues the tone of getting into in-depth philosophy, speaking on human nature and such. So that's kind of the tone that moves forward, and the story kind of plays out sporadically and sometimes in tandem through the lessons. But here we have characters introduced that conclude our saga. Duncan, Idaho continues to be a part of the story. They have a teenage Gola of Duncan, Idaho that they're moving forward with. We can see that the influence of the god Emperor Leto II continues, and that Duncan, Idaho has been continually used as a, shall we say, a genetic gardener, you could say, almost, in weaving into the Atreides line and giving them desirable traits, as well as who was the woman? I forget the woman's name in the God Emperor, the one that ends up with Duncan, Idaho. Anyway, that happens to where the Atreides gain invisibility to prescience, I guess you could say. Technology is starting to make a comeback in this book, so you see the after effects of the scattering. They don't really know what's happening to humanity on the outside of the known worlds. So there's a lot of unknowns in this book as we see an interesting threat arise, and that is the honored matres. These are rogue reverend mothers that use an alternative spice substance and look to leverage their sexual knowledge to control men, in a sense, gain drones and minions and use them to their purposes. One of my favorite characters is introduced in this book, Miles Tagg. He's a very interesting character. And then we also have Shiana. Is it Shiana? Yeah, Shiana, who gains a connection with the worms of Arrakis, or I guess Arrakeen that they call it at this point. And that continues to unfold. All in all, big spoiler, you probably would change off now if you don't want this. In this one, we see the destruction of DUNE. The Honor Matres destroy it, and in a way, it increases their power with their alternate spice substance and their corrupt ways of the Bene Gesserit. All in all, I think we see a statement from Frank Herbert to human nature, which is we tend to play with the tools that we inherit and we alter them to our purposes. And then who knows what is going to come of that, but clearly over the course of the books, it's suggesting an imminent destruction, a hanging axe, I think is the way they put it. And we see characters try to meet the axe head on, so to speak, and interact with it. So the biggest things in this book are Bene Gesserit on the run, sending out people into the scattering to see if they could survive, what's to come. So it's kind of bleak. It takes a bleak tone in this future in the DUNE saga. It's just it's a game of survival, and it's a game of trying to preserve generational knowledge. But in a way, it's something that the tyrant, Leto II, accounted for, and we can see where he just propelled everyone on this path to scatter amongst the stars. I guess you could almost look at it as a reset, so that culture would have an opportunity to regain itself rather than just go down with the Titanic that is its own culture. I think we sense in this book that the God Emperor condemns the culture completely and sees it as something he cannot save, because his coercion in controlling the spice, forcing everyone to get along, was his way of preserving it for a time. But I think he knew once he was long gone that it was inevitably going to die. So, very interesting book in this sense. We have some interesting characters. Like I said, I enjoy the character Miles Tague. I find him very interesting. He's a Bene Gesserit general. He comes out of retirement to serve the end days, so to speak. And, oh wow, that's a lot of sun. Woo! We see an evolution with him in perfecting himself, even to a point beyond what the Bene Gesserit can comprehend. And then we see an interesting dance with the Talaxu for knowledge and stuff. What do they call them? Axolotl tanks, I think is what they call it. They start to unveil some of the Bene Talax methods and how their women are what are used as the tanks in a kind of a horrific way. Anyway, all in all, Heretics of DUNE sets an interesting premise. We see relationships develop, and we see I guess you can say, a final statement on whether you can save a culture or not, and how the ones who gain the most power, I guess, are confronted with a decision, which is to either preserve it longer through coercion or just let it fall apart. So in this, the God Emperor is very interesting in the choices that he has made. Anyway, I think that'll conclude my review of Heretics of DUNE. I'll come back with a Chapterhouse DUNE with the final thoughts on that. So yeah, it's an interesting book. I recommend concluding the journey with Frank Herbert, but I will say that God Emperor Onward requires a lot of patience because there is a lot of in-code philosophizing and lecturing on some real things, because we can see where Frank Herbert uses some of these fictional entities as proxies to make statements about real organizations and real dispositions of mankind. So in that sense, you're kind of taking a journey with a college professor in a way to give you insight on the human condition. So in this sense, like, I recommend continuing the books and finishing them out. And I will see you guys for the next one, which I will record right after this.